Hello, everyone. So we hinted on our Twitter account a week or so ago that we were going to change things up over here at End Zone Scoop, and we certainly have. We are going live broadcasting now with our podcast. So yes, you'll still be able to hear us on audio only on all your favorite supporting podcast supporting apps, but we wanted to start a live YouTube. We just thought it would be just so much fun. Now, the change that might look a little different right now is that Liz is not here. Liz is still going to be with us. She just had a conflict today, so she couldn't join us for our very first one. But with me, as she always is Shona Duthie. Shona, how are you?
I'm good. Just the weather is terrible in Scotland as usual. We had a lovely week, and then now it's like, yeah, you had some sun, so have some thunderstorms and rain.
It's balance, girl. That's what it's all about. It's balance. Shona, you invited a very good friend of yours to join us for our very first live podcast.
I did. So standing in for Liz is Johnny, who will be a great addition to us this week. And he is from 99 Yards. So Johnny, want to say hello to the folks?
Hi, everyone.
Yeah. Johnny, we are so grateful that he stepped in when Liz couldn't join us. We were so excited and we appreciate it so much. So let's dive right into kind of some of the hotter topics. Training camp starts today, right? And so all the news has been about who showed up, who didn't. I decided, maybe too unilaterally without asking you guys, that we weren't going to talk about Aaron Rodgers on the show. Two reasons. Number one, I'm sick of hearing about Aaron Rodgers. And I have an issue with Aaron Rodgers. It's personal. I get it. But I'm just saying, sick of talking about him. He showed up. It's just going to be this year. He's going to move on. Maybe he'll retire and go live in California with his wife. Who knows? But we're not going to talk about that as I just talked about it. But I do want to talk about one of the other biggest kind of topics that has been out there in the last bit. And that is the fact that Deshaun Watson, quarterback for the Houston Texans, for a minute anyway, did show up to training camp. Now, he said very bluntly all offseason, he was not coming to training camp. He was not going to play for the Texans ever again. He wasn't putting that uniform back on. But a little bit, and people expected him to maybe not be able to play. We're going to talk about his legal issues here in just a little bit. But what was interesting to me is when other people were talking about this, I discovered that it's $50,000 a day fine if you do not show up to training camp. Now, that used to be something that the teams could kind of waive, or they'll be like, yeah, we're going to fine you. And then they're like, oh, we're so happy you're here. We're going to get rid of all those fines. And then that changed. In the last bargaining agreement, the NFL said, hey, we're going to give you some things you want to the NFLPA, but in turn, we want people to show up to training camp. And if they don't, this $50,000 a day fine is non-negotiable. It's just automatic. So I think that's probably why there's Aaron Rodgers at camp and there's Deshaun Watson at camp and all these other people who you might expect to hold out. They're going to keep that money because that $50,000 a day adds up really quick. But I want to talk about Deshaun Watson. So we all know his legal troubles. And before we heard about his legal troubles, we knew he wanted out of Houston. Then his legal troubles came in. And for those who don't know, which I can't fathom, there are a large group of women who's saying that he had sexual misconduct with them. The thing of it is this is where people are starting to be split. And this is what I want to get your two opinions on. There's a large group of people that say Deshaun Watson should not even be at training camp right now, that he should be on the commissioner's exempt list until this is all figured out. He has 22 civil cases against him. Now, I'm going to make sure that people understand this is civil cases, not criminal cases against him. There has been no charges filed against him yet, and they do always say yet, but they're saying with the evidence they have right now, they do not have enough to charge him with a criminal case. So here's my question for you, and I'm going to start with you, Johnny. Do you think that Deshaun Watson should even be at camp? Do you think that Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers is on my brain. Roger Goodell should have him on the exempt list, or do you think it's right that they're going to kind of see this through and see what happens first?
I think, from Watson's point of view, if he's saying he's done nothing wrong, he's got the right to protest his innocence, and he's got the right to innocent until proven guilty. And there's been no formal criminal charges. There's been no sanctions from the league. So why should he, why should he miss out on money? Why should he miss out on building a relationship with possibly his teammates for this year? Possibly not. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's all a bit icky to think that he's done nothing, and there's something gone on, because you don't get 22 women coming out of the woodwork and saying, well, this has happened. So I think from Watson's point of view, why wouldn't you? If you're saying that's what's happened. And I was also reading that he wants the depositions from any civil cases to be put up and be public entities, and the people that are working these cases don't want that to happen, and that sounds a little bit weird in itself. I mean, if you're accusing someone of doing something, you probably want them to know what has happened and the public to know what has happened. So it's a really strange situation. It's not like it's clear cut one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah. Shona, what about you? What is your stance on whether Watson should even be able to participate right now?
I think this is the issue. Like, we don't know if he is guilty, and this is where it kind of gets murky and icky, and you don't really know what side to be on. Where if he is already on the commissioner's exemption list, that's basically saying it's true. He's done this with all these women, and he's not allowed to play in the NFL. I'm not saying he's not guilty, because as Johnny said, there's so much women that's coming out, and I think 10 women have now filed complaints with Houston police about him, according to his attorney. So, but the problem is, if he goes off into the list, the NFL are basically saying, yeah, he's guilty, and we don't you just don't know if he is. I don't know if it's a thing where he should be shipped. The Texans are obviously willing to listen to draft offers. When I first heard about this, it seemed all a bit strange. It was coming out as soon as Watson said he wanted to leave the Texans. But, as more and more women come out, you can't not listen to what they're saying. Something maybe isn't quite as, as much as they're saying, but something has obviously gone, if something inappropriate has obviously happened, maybe for this to have happened. But I think he might play for a team this season, and I think you're the same, Dana, that I think someone will take that chance on him, and I think he will play, because at the moment, none of these are criminal court cases. They're all civil. So
right.
I think he might. I think he might actually play for a team. I'm not sure how well that would sit well with the team's fans, or but if they need a quarterback, and he's still quite talented, so they might actually just let it ride if it's winning them games. It's a very, very weird situation. I think a lot of fans are getting quite excited about it, and they are kind of forgetting the fact that he has this, civil case up against him, which I don't think we should ignore at all. That is still there. But at the same time, if I was the Texans, why would you not listen to something for a quarterback that's not going to play for you guys ever again?
Right. I mean, he's made that very clear. So, interesting enough, there was a lot of people who were like, well, it's not criminal, so therefore the NFL is not going to touch it, because it's just civil. It's just civil case. People get sued all the time. And that's not always true. We have to keep in mind that Ben Roethlisberger and his little issue that he had, if that's what we're going to call it, never came out with criminal charges in any way. He was still suspended for 6 games. The same with Ezekiel Elliott. There was a civil case. Nothing criminal ever came of it. Was suspended for 6 games. So I think at some point, at minimum, as long as criminal charges are never filed, at minimum, the NFL has to try and be consistent on that and give him a 6-game suspension for conduct detrimental to the league. But at the same time, they seem to be sitting on it, and I don't know if that's for the Texans' benefit so that they can maybe get better trade for him, if that's for Watson's benefit, or what it is. We don't know, because we don't know the inner workings of the NFL other that they're inconsistent. But at the same time, I could get why they're not ready to dip their foot in that pond yet. Now, so let's go ahead and talk about some of these teams that might be interested in them. There is a handful of teams that have been talking about Johnny's totally fine with him going to the Eagles.
I'm not. I don't want him.
Yeah, but no. So, there's a handful of teams that have looked into, trade. We know that there's a couple of teams that probably make more sense than others, because there's teams who are so quarterback needy. But if you were a GM, Johnny, if you were a GM, and you knew that there was probably a minimum 6-game suspension coming on, would you take that risk knowing that they're more than likely he's going to pretty much skate through this and be able to play full season in 22 for sure?
I mean, there's a lot of variables. It's
so true.
If they're saying, well, they want a combination of 5 players and or high draft picks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is huge. The Eagles are obviously in a position to do that, but there's no way that I would even touch that trade. If you think about what the Eagles what they gained for Wentz, that would be the comparable sort of value I'd be looking at. 5 high draft picks is just a ridiculous amount. And there's no GM that should, I think, in their right mind, give up the farm for that, especially if they're on a lesser talented team, because you've got a quarterback who's just going to get killed or have no one to throw the ball to.
Right. So the one team, Shona, I find really interesting in this whole scenario, and it's not just the Deshaun Watson scenario, but also the Aaron Rodgers scenario for next year, is the Washington football team. And the reason I find them so interesting and intriguing is they have one of, if not the best defense in the league right now. Their defense is insane, right? They have that piece put together beautifully. They're very much lacking, and I ever hate to say Ryan Fitzpatrick is lacking, but they're lacking in the long-term quarterback situation. I love Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think he's fantastic. But if you were a team like Washington who had almost all of your pieces together, you just needed a long-term answer and a quarterback, but you had one you thought you could trust for a year, would you dip your foot in that pond? It would be hard to say no.
I agree. And I think the Washington's defense is one of the best. I love it. Chase Young is I love him. Pick him up and put him in my pocket and keep him there for the rest of the day, because he is fantastic to watch, and he just seems such a nice, grounded young guy. Anyway, minus my Chase Young love effect. If I was the Washington football team, I can't think I kind of would be interested in it, purely because, as you say, you've got Ryan Fitzpatrick there who can easily do a job for a year. They're still kind of in this rebuilding sort of period under Riviera. Why not take a punt on Watson? To me, they might be the team that looks most likely to land him.
At what price, though?
It's a good question.
It's a very good
because
question.
You have to think long term. And let's be honest, Washington doesn't have the best reputation as is right now with all the stuff going on with Dan Snyder and all of that. Do you really want to add that to the mix? Maybe a PR nightmare. I'm not sure, but you're absolutely right. The price of what they'll get. And maybe Houston put that price so high so that no one would bite. And if Deshaun wanted to play, he would be forced to play for them. But do you really want a quarterback who's forced to play for you? I mean, except for then he is playing for another contract. I don't know. It's a mess. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how it all kind of shakes out over, really the next 4 weeks is there. I think a lot will be determined. His agent's convinced he's going to be traded this week, and I just don't really see that happening necessarily. But we'll see.
Peter King has said that the best thing for Deshaun, and also he mentioned the Eagles specifically, that Deshaun basically sits out this year, and come next year when the legal troubles are sorted, and we know what's going to happen, then would be a chance to trade for him, because the value is likely to be lower or certainly stable, and you know what you're going to get. And I thought that was interesting, and it made sense, because there's just too many moving parts at the moment.
Yeah, too many unknowns. I completely agree. Yeah, so we'll have to see. I want to make it very clear, though, to our listeners, because I'm going to get a lot of hate Twitter. I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that I believe or don't believe Deshaun Watson, or I do or don't believe those women. If he is guilty of these things, I don't think he should play another day of football in his life. That's a whole different conversation, but we work with the information that we have right now in front of us. So that's what we are doing. All right, so let's move on. I would like to talk about COVID. I work in a hospital. My real job is at a children's hospital. If I hear the word COVID one more time, I'm going to cry, because that's all we ever talk about, because kids are sick and I'm tired of it. But it is a huge factor in our lives. It is now a huge factor in our sports lives. Do you remember just a month ago, 2 months ago, when they're like, it's going to be full stadiums and no one has to wear a mask and everything's going to be great? And now dial back. They're having to dial that back. The NFL just came out with new COVID restrictions. I guess kind of. It's been about a week or so now that they came out with them, laying out the rules for players and coaches that aren't vaccinated and are vaccinated. We've had 2 coaches quit their jobs because or let go. We just kind of aren't sure on that, because they refused to get the COVID vaccine, which basically makes them completely ineffective coaches. I think, was it the Vikings coach? He's now like a special liaison or whatever. So they kept him in the organization, but he will not be a hands-on coach. Let's talk about the protocols and kind of the change of tune the NFL has kind of come along with the new Delta variant. Shona, you were going to look into those protocols. What do you think was what basic are the basics?
Well, basically, the NFL has now said that unvaccinated players will be subjected to a fine of $14,650 every time they violate COVID-19 procedures. So, if you're not wearing a mask or you're breaking a protocol, you're going to be fined on the spot. And this was brought to light because Bruce Arians told a reporter that, it's NFL policy and it's going to be league rules. And, these guys are kind of like role models, and a lot of people will follow what they do and say, a prime example is Najee Harris has made the headlines during the weekend for the Steelers training camp because he's now walking around wearing a yellow wristband indicating that he has not started or completed the COVID-19 vaccination process. And it's meant to be about training camp, and people get excited about what their players are going to do in training camp, who's the breakout stars, and now all we're going to be talking about again to start the season is COVID and COVID protocol. Yeah, I completely understand, but these rules are sending a clear message to the players: get vaccinated or fear the consequences. And they're not just limited to the dangers of COVID-19, with the league also threatening to penalize teams if they have an outbreak among vaccinated players. So last year we saw, postponements happening. They're basically saying that's not going to happen this year. It'll be a forfeit. You'll lose the game, and that's it. It's a losing. It could be the difference between a winning or a losing record. So it's all very interesting to see how this will play out this season. But yeah, I'm with you, Dana, if I hear the word COVID one more time, because I literally talk about it every day in my job.
So, I thought one of the more interesting aspects of these new rules was basically that if there was an outbreak among unvaccinated players, and that they couldn't reschedule that game within the same week. So it had to be the same week, that then that team would have to forfeit that game. But both teams would lose their paragraph 5 paychecks, which basically means they don't get their game check for either team. What this did, not so very sneakily, I might add, they're not being sneaky about this at all, is add a huge level of peer pressure to this. So you decide to not get vaccinated. And I want to say this. I understand the huge amount of distrust that the Black community and people of color have against the medical community. I understand that. It is a long history of distrust. I totally get it. But, and I hate to say but there because I do get it. But what the NFL is trying to do is add that level of peer pressure. So you have I think we have 11 or 12 teams now that are 90% vaccinated. It's like some huge number. And those 1 or 2 players could cost them their game check. Now, do you think a rookie is going to care with his $525,000 or $575,000 check? Or is Russell Wilson's $5 million game check going to, you know what I mean? And so it's a huge push-pull. And it seems to have worked to a certain extent. DJ Reed, he plays for the Seattle Seahawks. He was very adamant during OTAs that he was not getting the vaccine. He wanted more information. He just didn't trust it. And then he released things that says, I got my first today because I'm not going to be a competitive disadvantage to my team. And so I think that it's working. Johnny, how do you feel about the Steelers? This is a perfect example that Shona brought up, making unvaccinated players wear a wristband saying that they are unvaccinated. Do you think that's the proper way to go about it?
I think it makes sense. I mean, the problem is that obviously vaccinated players can still catch and still spread COVID. You look at Rich Eisen as a high-profile example. So it's not a perfect antidote. It's not a perfect way around it, but it does make players more aware and instantly. But is that going to work when they're training together? How's that going to work? Mm-hmm. Are you going to think, oh, he's got a yellow band, I can't go near him, I can't tackle him? Mm-hmm. It's an imperfect situation. Mm-hmm. So it's doing something, but I'm not sure it's doing enough. But at the same time, if you've got those players, especially with the NFL squads the size they are, mm-hmm. and no changes to the COVID restrictions in terms of the roster and the number of people that you can be placed on reserve for it, I think then it becomes an issue. So they needed to do something. I do question how effective a yellow wristband will be.
Right. It is interesting. And I think that, because there's a lot of people online who are complaining. It's like, oh, but like you said, even if you get the vaccine, you can still get it and spread it, which if you have the vaccine, that number goes way, way down. Let's make that very clear, that, if you do. Plus, the NFL is saying this player has done all he can to help us fight this. So we aren't going to penalize him for that. He's done what he can. This player has not done all that he can to help us fight this. Do I think that's right? I struggle. I am very pro-vaccine. I've made that very clear. I'm very, very pro-vaccine, obviously work in healthcare. But I get why some people are having a little bit of pushback with this. Shona, what do you think would happen come the end of the season? And let's say, let's give the Houston Texans a benefit of a doubt for a minute because we know this isn't going to happen. But they were one game from making the playoffs, and they had to forfeit one back in September. What do you think that does to the fan base? Do they go after the players or do they go after the NFL? Because they're not going to be quiet about that.
Yeah, I mean, just flowing back to the last point, I feel like it's very much like the Scarlet Letter, when she was made to wear an A because she broke protocol. Yeah, it's a little bit like harping back to those times. I thought we were in the 21st century. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, well, if that was me, if as a Seahawks fan, say, or a Texans fan, hypothetically, I'll be a Texans fan for today. I would be pissed. And I don't know if I would be pissed at the players or if I think I'd be a mixture of both. I feel like I would understand why some players would do it. But at the same time, it's not really about, I'm pro vaccine and I'm very much I've not really got the vaccine for myself. I got the vaccine for my mom, who's a nurse, my elderly sort of family. My, fiance's mother is having, she had to shield through the whole pandemic. I got it because I would feel dreadful if I was one of those people who decided not to get vaccinated because, I eat McDonald's every week, but I don't know what's in a vaccine, which doesn't make any sense to me, but I'll move on. And she got COVID. So, I would be annoyed at them, but I'd also be quite annoyed at the NFL for it's kind of a bit draconian, some of the rules they've come up with. And I understand why they've gone hard, because they're like, let's go hard and maybe players will get vaccinated. And it has worked to a certain extent, as you said, Dana. But yeah, I think I'd be pissed at both.
Yeah. Well, like Johnny said, it's not a perfect system, but they're doing what they can, because we all are just kind of fighting this as we go.
I think mainly, though, the motivation comes down to the dollars that the NFL makes from those games. I mean, it's not about public safety. It's not about the player safety so much as they want those games to go ahead. They don't want to be losing that money from a game that's cancelled and rescheduled, or losing TV rights to that game. I mean, that would be a huge financial burden to them. And in a league year where they've already said that each team has suffered a massive loss, they don't want to be carrying that on in year two.
Yeah.
So that, for me, is the main motivation. Not one of public liability and how you deal with that, public responsibility.
You're absolutely right, because if that were the case, there would not be full stadiums this fall.
Exactly.
Yeah, but we'll wait and see if that holds over. Already people in California are like, are we going to get to go? And they're like, we don't know. So I think that there might be some changes.
And they just made changes, didn't they? In the US today, they've just announced that they need to wear face masks in when they go out in public buildings inside, don't they?
Yep, that's the CDC's recommendation. Yeah. Now, the thing that works in the United States is that each state gets to make their own decision. So Chiefs fans, you're going to be able to go to your football games because Missouri doesn't give two craps. But California, Washington, Arizona, New York, you guys might have a whole different issue. But. All right, well, let's talk about how this could affect the London games. So the borders, and I know this well because I look every Monday, because I am coming to London in October, come hell or high water, even if there's not a football game, but they still have not opened the borders for the U.S. and England. And these football games are not that far away. So it'll be interesting to see if this COVID outbreak and the COVID rules and how many teams kind of end up with COVID issues start to affect the London games. I think that Liz told us that they haven't even started selling game tickets for those games, right? Is that correct?
No, yeah. So I'm a season ticket holder. I have been since 2-3 years ago when I first went, and I have not been emailed at all to be like, renew your season ticket. And it's normally in by now, if I remember right, Johnny. It's normally in about this time, and you're normally
months in advance, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's sort of around March time.
Yeah, and you're normally paying up like your final season ticket price like round about now. Yeah. So it's I to be honest, I don't see London games going ahead purely because Boris has decided to throw all the rules out the window down in England for
3 weeks until we get locked down again.
Yeah. And he's basically being like, it's up to the public to have common sense. And I'm like, did you see the Wembley games? They have zero common sense when it comes to sport. But yeah, so I'm skeptical as to whether the London games will go ahead. And I think the NFL UK will probably make a call soon because it takes a lot to organize them as well. Mm-hmm. And if there's no tickets being on sale for the season ticket holders, then how are they going to be able to then do the single game tickets for people who don't buy season tickets as well? So it's a logistical nightmare at the minute to even know what's going to go on with the London games.
Well, kind of like Johnny just said a minute ago, the almighty dollar has a tendency, or the almighty pound for you guys, has a tendency to win out. So it'll be interesting. What I do find interesting is that the rumor is that there will not be tickets sold to U.S. fans, that if they do go, it will be to U.K. fans only, which is fine. I don't love it. It's 2 years in a row having to cancel this trip, but safety is important. So that is good. That'll be good. We'll see what happens. I am in through NFL On Location. That's where I always get my UK tickets from. And we haven't heard a darn thing either. So we're right there with you. All right. Well, let's end today with something a little more fun, shall we? So the Madden ratings are starting to come out. Holy crap. People were pissed about Tyreek Hill, which cracked me up. So Tyreek Hill, wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs, only got a 98.
Only. Oh my God. How does he get out of bed in the morning?
There's lots of reasons he shouldn't get out of bed in the morning, but I'm going to let that go. But so we do have a couple of players that are in the 99 club, right? That would be the one, the only, the magnificent Aaron Donald, who, because, I love defense. He just makes me so happy. And then Devontae Adams, which only cracks me up because of the whole situation going on in Green Bay. Yeah. And it's like, okay, but if his quarterback's not there, is he still a 99? I don't know. So it's really interesting. Some other really high marks. DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver for the Cardinals, got a 98. Myles Garrett, love him too, 98 for the Browns.
Actually. What? Justice for Myles Garrett more than Tyreek Hill. He should be in that 99 club.
I agree. I think you disagreed with us, Johnny, right? You thought that he should have got a 99?
Tyreek?
Yeah.
No, nowhere near that.
No,
I thought you said he should have got it. Oh, good.
No.
I think Tyreek Hill maybe was like, I'm going to slip Madden, a little backhander, here, give me a 99 because, I've had such a great season.
When you look at the routes that Hopkins runs, for example, and compare them to Tyreek, they're just different leagues.
Mm-hmm.
And Hopkins isn't a 99, he's a 98.
Mm-hmm.
There was on, I don't know if you guys saw it, but on Twitter there was a break or a video of all of, not his routes necessarily, but Adams making cuts and making guys miss. And there's no way that Hill's doing any of that.
Yeah.
He was breaking people's ankles. He was that good.
Mm-hmm. I look a lot of times at these wide receivers. Everyone who knows me knows I'm not a huge offense fan, but I do like wide receivers a little better than, let's say, a quarterback. But I look at some of these wide receivers and I think, would they be as effective with a different quarterback? And the only one that you can absolutely say that with right now is DeAndre Hopkins, because he went from the Texans, where he was fantastic, to the Cardinals, who was fantastic, with Kyler Murray. And then the other one is Stephon Diggs. The massive influence he had in Minnesota and now in Buffalo, and is still just as good. Those are the type of players. I don't know that I could say that about Tyreek. No. I don't know if he had to go play for not Patrick Mahomes that he would be as good of a player.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's an interesting.
I think he thinks he's a lot better than he is. Don't get me wrong. He is very fun to watch. Like, his speed is insane. But if you look at the Bucs, they nullified that in the Super Bowl. Like, you can work him out a lot easier, I think, if you've got a good defense, as the Bucs do. Which is probably why he's. I actually don't know why he's in the 98 club, but yeah, that's just my opinion. Sorry, Chief fans.
They'll survive. A couple other notable names. Julio Jones is a 95, even though he switched teams this year. So we'll see how that goes for him. That could turn out really well for him with Tannehill is now his new quarterback. JJ Watt is a 94. Even though he switched teams, he's now with the Cardinals. He is tied with his brother TJ. They both are 94. So that put that little family squabble to rest. Von Miller. I had forgotten Von Miller did not play last year from training camp. Oh. And then I saw him interviewed and I got so excited to see Von Miller play. I know he's getting older, but I'm very excited about that. He got 93. I
just love him. I loved him ever since he was on Dancing with the Stars.
Was he on Dancing with the Stars?
Good for him. It was, yeah. No idea. I think he made it the final, or at least the semifinal. I thought he was fantastic.
That's awesome. Interesting. Michael Thomas is on here to 94, even though we now know he, has this injury he's recovering from on there. I'm not a Madden player. Sorry. not really a video game person, sort of a thing. But I understand that these are very important to people, like these ratings. Johnny, I don't know if you have any insight, but why do you think it's so important to these players where they end up?
I think they want players to use them, and they want to be the best at their position. And if you want to be the best at your position in the NFL, you're going to want to be the best in a video game. I mean, especially these kids have grown up, a lot of them playing Madden, playing before that NCAA. They want to see themselves in the game. They want to see themselves represented well. And that's why every year you'll see the Mac Jones, for example, saying, well, my break tackle should be 57 and it's 26. And he's saying, well, that's not right. And then you've got players that are saying are better than they want to be. But it feels like in the modern age, it's all immaterial anyway, because it changes week to week, because they update it week to week. And you've got guys are saying, oh, I'm in the 99 club, who are then an 84 by the end of the season.
I don't think Aaron Donald will be down to an 84 at the end of the season.
Donald has been in the 99 club the last 5 years, so it's not
and
bad.
Well deserved.
Oh, definitely.
Well deserved indeed. Yeah. I'm not sure.
Fletcher Cox is a 94.
I'm not sure his counterpart of Adams will be in the 99 club if Aaron doesn't stay, but who knows?
All right. Well, it's going to be fun. And for those of you video game people, I'm glad you guys are having a great time with it, because I think the fights on Twitter are hilarious.
Yeah.
Which is
that's what I'm here for. I literally can just type in Madden, if I'm having like
what I'm here for too.
Type in Madden, it'll cheer me up for a good 2 minutes. It really does.
They do go on and on about it. Oh, you can't say that.
I'm waiting for Seahawks Twitter to explode when ours come out.
Oh,
I'm
Lord.
quite happy with the Eagles. Have got their rookie receiver is very highly rated.
He is, yeah.
He is. He's joint second, I believe, at 75.
Mm-hmm. And look at that Fletcher Cox in there. I do love Fletcher Cox. All right. All right. Well, that is our show for this week. We will be back in a couple of weeks with another live podcast, because this is how we're doing it now, people. So we hope that you will hit that subscribe button on YouTube, hit the bell so you're notified when we go live, and we will see you guys all again. Oh my gosh, it'll be like halfway through training camp. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. The season's almost here. We'll see you guys soon.
Bye, guys.